Hey everyone, I'm Ija, and I'm here to present Curio. So just to give a kind of quick background of myself, I built my first game I call it, when I was 12. When I had some thoughts when playing Plants vs. Zombies, and such as new types of zombies, where it can take a picture of the plants and hurt all of them. And I actually built it on the Flash machine, built the zombies and plants frame by frame, and let my classmates play it. Some of them enjoy it, which, yeah, so that's like my first. Gaming has been very dear to me, and played and built games in the past, and really, really excited about on-chain game paradigm, and that's why right now I'm building with Kevin, my co-founder and partner, working on Curio, which is a on-chain strategy game, and yeah, and share some thoughts and progress. And yeah, sometimes I go by 1+. Also on Twitter, I'm 0x1+. But yeah. So what is Curio? So Curio is a real-time strategy game, 4x genre. Basically, it's very similar to Red Alert or Civilization, that type, where players have both a resource allocation strategy as well as a combat-based strategy. So the kind of one metric that we optimize for is composability and interoperability. So we think that right now, obviously, we have seen some interesting innovation from blockchains by thinking of kind of asking the question of, okay, like what are some, mostly like the financialization aspects that we can add to the traditional game model, right? The game studio model where you put a lot of money into kind of rendering and lore and all of that and take a very long time, and then kind of that stays the same, and then you just add like the NFT assets and maybe play to earn, right? That's very interesting, but you know, I, as well as probably many of you, think that that's probably on the very, very shallow side of what blockchain can do, right? So instead, we want to ask the question of what is something that we can enable natively, right, from blockchain, from Ethereum, this global world execution layer for anyone, right? And yeah, we're greatly inspired by Dark Forest and many other on-chain games in the space, and yeah, it's been very interesting. I'll show a little demo in a bit, but the quick spiel about the game progress is it's still being built, and we're adjusting a lot of the gameplay. And it really, at the end of the day, when we start beta testing, we want to kind of let the community dictate where the game go, right? At the end of the day, it might not even have a map, like a grid-based map, but right now it does, and that's kind of the start of it. So one interesting experiment we built is called Programmable blocks. And what it is it really is just units of arbitrary logic. So it's very interesting how Esgracia shared their programmable tiles. We kind of reached from different places into kind of similar technical implementation, which you'll see in a second. So this is an example of contract-side plugins, right, as opposed to kind of client-side plugins that change how people perceive the blockchain, what happens on the blockchain. This actually empowers people to build on the blockchain, on Ethereum itself, and interact with the game logic itself. So it's kind of modding in traditional gaming, but on steroids. And we want to encourage doing this very fast game iteration through user-generated content. In the past, gaming has always been this process that takes very long. We hope to shorten that and make it much more interesting in a very short period of time. So just to show a quick demo over here, this is the state of game, or like one direction of the state of game last month. I will talk a little bit about this. So on this map, which is a small map just for demo, you see a few types of objects, right? So you see some walls that define the border of the world, the virtual world. You see some towers which are akin to cities or home bases in Civilization and other kind of 4x games. You see resources on the ground that are able to be extracted, and craft items on the right, which I'm not sure if it's clear enough to see, but there are minions, which are kind of armies, units that people can move around. So right now, people can control multiple agents instead of single agent. you have turbos, block, door. Door I'll explain in a second, but turbo and block are two kind of tools, things that you can build in the map, similar to, in StarCraft you can have resource like resource extractors and things like that. Yeah, and then this door is really interesting because yeah. This store is really interesting because it's completely like third-party contract where basically a player or anyone has written that contract and sent to the game instance and basically included, right? And then what we have, so there's some movement. Let me just show a little bit of video. So you can attack minions. These are just gameplay, but so you can stake in towers, and then this player is going to move down to the door, click on the door, and all of this UI is automatically generated from the ABI, similar to the D.E.F.CON approach. I will actually show you. So yeah, basically this door has the function of only letting whitelisted player pass. Right? You can imagine other functions such as ZK enforce door, where you have to show you have at least 3, but not over 7 of like a certain resource type, or any logic you want, essentially. Much more powerful than existing kind of low-code tool, open APIs for building games. So going back to the presentation. Oops. Oh, there we go. So a bit of tech spec on what just happened with the door. Essentially, a developer, which can be anyone, can send whatever block.sol and get to the blockchain, which is we're building on AVM, and get ABI, send the ABI to IPFS, send that to the game deployer, which also can be anyone, and the game deployer then set the struct, deploy game, and then port over config to front end, which then fetches the ABI and renders that third-party contract. So notice that this process can be greatly simplified on the user experience side, right? So right now the flow is you kind of have to either clone a contract or use a remix style panel that allows user to add the contract. In the future, you can have a few drag and drop like default type of characteristics that people can just change for, that may cover 95% of programmable blocks. And notice that programmable blocks is only the first step towards this massive modularization of gaming, right? It's basically the atom in the virtual world, and there are much more higher level items such as identity and other stuff that you can also have tools that allow people to build on it, which we are approaching that direction. So yeah, some examples. I mentioned ZK Enforce Store. You can have access control treasure chests. You can have trading related stuff, AMM embedded in the game. You can have event betting platform. It really is like limitless, and it has, with blockchain having financial aspects already, like it's easy to incorporate that as well. Yeah, and this is the code for the door a month ago. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Now I want to switch gear for a bit and talk about like the high level, which is UGC-driven metaverse modularization, which is what we're going for. And a bit of context, right? Like this is to illustrate like the current or the past condition of things, and feel free to take a guess on any of these 3 numbers. So let's talk about the second 2 and then the first one. So it took, some of the top games today, such as Genshin Impact is like one of the top on mobile, has taken a very, very long time and kind of like financial investment by game studios to make, and that's in sharp contrast to a lot of tech world, which is extremely API kind of modularized. And why is that, right? And there are obviously multiple reasons, but one is that there's no such unified execution layer that people can build on top of, right? A lot of people have asked me, right, if all the game studios in the world just simultaneously open up their API, right? Well, we don't need any of this on-chain game anymore, which may or may not be right, but let's say that's right? Then you can have the same logic and say, why don't the banks open up all their API at once? Then we don't need DeFi anymore. So I really think it's kind of from the incentive layer, not something that can happen with the traditional game world, and we're basically seeing a historical opportunity or like paradigm shift where right now we have this layer, and it's now a question of what can we build on top that can be fun and can engage people. That's what really excites me. And then obviously, like a lot of past gaming, other than alpha and beta tests, which often happen in the company itself, there's very few players that's involved in developing content for games. And kind of because of that, it has very long cycles and heavy investment, and that leads to very high failure rate for games. We want to change all of that through user-generated content. And it echoes a lot of things that previous other teams have talked about. And yeah, it's very, very exciting. So UGC has been prevalent in advertising, video, music, right? Basically, like all the YouTube videos, like everyone knows that, but relatively lacking in gaming, actually. Like people know about Roblox. About half of the top games on Roblox are still made by Roblox itself. And gaming is still this area where it requires very high quality, right? At least so far, that UGC hasn't seen as much heat as in others. But it's obviously something that people want, and the question is why we can't have more UGC. So I want to take a moment to talk about problems in modding. In 2015, Steam tried to open up paid mods for this really mod-heavy game called Skyrim. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it or played it. And it faced a very large backlash from the community, not just from players, but also from the modders themselves. And you may ask why, right? That seems like a pretty normal thing to do. And I concluded to 3 main problems. The first is, well, limited flexibility. So actually, let's talk about the second 2 first. The high friction payments. So what happened with the modders in Steam was that if your revenue does not exceed a certain threshold, let's say you're a small modder that you like a couple, maybe 1,000 players enjoy your mod, but not more, and you get whatever payment for that, you literally cannot withdraw your money. Like there's that friction in place, and it actually is so true. Like there's still a lot of friction in these financial aspects of traditional gaming, and that's very painful. And adding on to that is that actually players or like modders took about 20% of the total revenue. That's Steam's take rate. Steam took more than 30%, and Steam took more than, I think, 40% of the total, which is a pretty unreasonable take rate, and Web3 can definitely change that. Crypto gaming can definitely change that. And then adding on to that is the limited flexibility of modding, right? Like in a lot of past games, like Skyrim is a single-player game, and a lot of stuff people build are new maps that are engaging, but not necessarily new ways of interaction. And I think that with the Ethereum as the execution layer, all of this can get way better. And just to look at some of the past revenue models, just for thought, this is kind of a question that we need to think about. How do we how do we get more game developers to come and develop these permissionless games for everyone, right? From an incentive model perspective, there needs to be kind of a stable but not obviously not kind of annoying or friction with friction type of model that rewards these contributions. So, like interesting models to think about. Minecraft, right now, it's obviously paid to play. In China, it's different. It's free to play with in-game sales. Very interesting. Roblox has subscription plus advertising, and actually not really a mod-based game, but so transaction fee for controlled marketplace. So that will be different once the backend or the contract side will be opened up, where you cannot really enforce the marketplace or the take rate, right? So that's something all of us need to think about. So some next steps for Curio, and I guess for a lot of on-chain games. So for us specifically, we are thinking heavily on curated marketplace and reputation system. So when you open up, like a large problem in crypto is curation and discovery. And because you allow everyone to build content, obviously, at the beginning, a large portion of that isn't going to be satisfactory based on people's past expectations. So how do we kind of recommend the right, or like curate the right game instances or plugins for different groups of people, right? And I personally think that might have to do with AI and a bunch of other relevant fields. We want to create more low-code, no-code tools for plugin creation. Right now, the on-chain game community is very passionate, but restricted to a small group of technical people. We want that to change and open up to the group of non-technical people as well, because that's where most gamers are. And we want to think about esports tournament. Right now, esports can do very little. The watchers of esports can basically do watching or commenting and not much. There's some experiments on interacting with the streamer, but very little. We want to have, esports real-time governance, right, with crypto wallet and a lot of stuff that can be experimented. We want to experiment with different game genres, as I touched earlier. It's still very early in on-chain game, and we're by no means certain that we're going with the 4x. That really depends on our community. And we want to think about game-specific interoperability protocols. It's really great that we're all here and talking about kind of different but similar directions for approaching this decentralized metaverse. And the kind of core aspect is how do we have interesting interactions between these worlds, right? So having that earlier rather than later is definitely a plus. And then regarding Curio itself, right? We think that we want to make the game fun first, and then our general thinking is that if we build the engine first, there might be people who the friction might be too large for people to learn, get used to all of that, and then build interesting game. So we want to prove the concept with hopefully an interesting game ourselves, and then generalize and make that easier for everyone to build on top of it. So it's very similar in that sense to Roblox, how it built most of its early games to get people excited, and then the ecosystem. Yeah, so that's the general direction. And yeah, I wanted to do Q&As, but I guess it's inconvenient. So you can either come talk to me. We are looking for, we're a very small team right now of 3, and would actually love to talk to you to build this game together if you're interested. And also just, talk to us at 0xCurio on Twitter. But yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys.